Welcome to a new deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're trying something a bit different. We got this curated list of what was really buzzing on X yesterday, June 24th, 2025.
Yeah, sourced from that news show, Daily Vivecasting.
Exactly. Think of it like a super quick snapshot of the digital mood online yesterday.
The zeitgeist?
That's the word. And our mission is really to go beyond just the headlines, unpack what's hiding inside these trending posts.
Precisely. And we're looking at a really fascinating mix today. Everything from tech philosophy, corporate culture changes.
Right, all the way to global finance shifts and some pretty complex geopolitics.
We'll even touch on some social stories and, yeah, maybe find a little humor, too. We want to help you understand not just what trended, but maybe why it matters and, see the bigger picture connections.
Okay, let's jump right in. First post that really grabbed us was from @Elon Musk. He just posted, "True."
She's true.
Yeah, responding to this idea that X is a collective meta-mind. Seems simple, right? 2 words. But this is where it gets, really interesting.
It really does. What's so compelling, I think, is how this simple tweet taps into a huge debate, both philosophical and scientific.
Like, could X actually be a giant shared brain?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
There's actual research, like Michael Levin's work at Tufts on xenobots. These living robots with collective intelligence.
Oh, okay.
It suggests consciousness might be way broader than just, individual brains. And if you connect that to history, you've got ideas like collective consciousness, but updated now with studies on networked intelligence.
So platforms like X could be amplifying shared thinking.
Potentially, yes. Though, the peer-reviewed research urges caution linking digital stuff directly to biological consciousness. But the idea is powerful. These aren't just tools anymore. They might be evolving into something deeper.
And what about that Bioshock image with it?
Oh, right. The no gods or kings, only emperors banner. That adds another layer, doesn't it? Hints at maybe a shift towards decentralized power, which, fits with Musk's usual critiques of central control.
Okay, that's a heavy start. From this abstract meta-mind idea, let's pivot to something you can literally build. Moving from theory to something, playful almost. This post from @UnusualWhales about Deloitte really caught my eye.
The Lego thing.
Yeah. Deloitte U.S. employees can now apparently buy $1,000 worth of Lego on the company's dime.
Just to boost well-being. Is this for real? What's that about?
It is real, and it's actually a great example of how corporate wellness is changing. It's moving beyond just, gym memberships or free snacks.
So it's not just a gimmick.
Well, studies actually back it up. Things like building sets, these hands-on creative activities, they can boost productivity. Maybe even 15%, some research suggests.
Really? More than just cash. It's a different kind of value. Deloitte's own reports show that something like 40% of Americans are prioritizing experiences over just money, especially with inflation biting.
Interesting.
And it cleverly taps into that booming adult Lego market. That thing's grown like 20% a year since 2020. So yeah, maybe not just a gimmick. It's probably a pretty smart blend of keeping employees happy and maybe even some subtle brand engagement.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, getting creative with perks.
Definitely.
So we've seen tech changing how we think, companies changing how they treat workers. Now let's shift gears again. High-stakes global stuff, finance, power.
Yesterday's X feed was definitely buzzing there.
Sure.
First up, Watcher Guru posted this huge headline. Just TIN, Tetra Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says banks are free to conduct crypto activities. That sounds massive for crypto, right?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean for, say, the average person?
It is pretty significant, yeah. It marks a real shift in the official stance. Powell basically said during a hearing that banks can get involved with crypto, but with conditions.
Of course, yeah. Provided they ensure safety and soundness, the usual caveats.
Yeah.
But what's key is that this follows the Fed removing that old reputational risk guideline.
Ah, the one that made banks nervous about crypto.
Exactly. It discouraged them from working with crypto firms because, potential scandals, bad press. That specific worry is now officially off the table.
And the timing.
Well, it fits with some broader policy shifts under the Trump administration, maybe easing up restrictions on crypto generally. So for you, the listener, this could really change things. Maybe more banks start offering crypto services, more institutional money flows in.
Yeah.
It could push digital assets more mainstream.
Okay, watch this space. And speaking of the Trump administration, A really complex situation involving Israel and Iran was all over X yesterday. We saw posts from at Jack Posobiec, at J.D. Vance, at Kobisa Letter.
Yeah, a lot of angles on that one.
It seems like President Trump made this surprise public rebuke of Israel, claiming he'd brokered a ceasefire. But then it got messy fast. What's the story there?
It really underscores how fragile and honestly how contradictory international diplomacy can be.
Right.
So, on one side, you have Trump warning against more bombing to keep a ceasefire. That's a big shift from his usual, very pro-Israel stance. And some reports, like from the BBC, said Israel did hold back on major strikes after his call.
Okay.
But then other accounts, including J.D. Vance quoting Trump, and New York Times reports said the opposite. Iran's foreign minister denied any ceasefire. Iran apparently launched missiles even after Trump claimed this complete and total ceasefire.
Wow. So total confusion.
Or deliberate moves. Remember, this came just after reports of a U.S.-led bombing of Iranian nuclear sites. So is it miscommunication? Is it escalation? Maybe even splits within the administration? Plus, Vance's own conservative ideology is skeptical of long Middle East involvements, which could play into calls to bring pilots home.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, very tangled.
Definitely sounds like it. And kind of connected to all this high-stakes diplomacy, there was this other post from @Nixator just pointing out something visual. ILOL. Zelensky actually wore a suit this time. It was about Ukrainian President Zelensky at a NATO summit, not in his usual military gear. Why does something like clothes even become a thing on social media?
That's a great point, because attire in diplomacy is all about symbolism. And the context here is key.
What context?
Remember that reported Oval Office meeting back in February, where Trump and Vance apparently really laid into Zelensky? Experts called it unprecedented.
Oh, right. I remember hearing about that.
And Zelensky reportedly shot back about their lack of logic. Plus, his even being at this NATO summit depended on getting a meeting with Trump, showing how much Ukraine relies on U.S. support right now.
So the suit wasn't just a suit?
Probably not, no. It's likely a very deliberate strategic move. A response to past criticism, maybe. Projecting a more formal, serious image, trying to set a different tone for these crucial talks. Especially given Trump's, let's say, variable relationship with NATO. It's visual communication.
That makes perfect sense when you frame it like that. Okay, let's bring it back home. From international stages to a really poignant domestic story that got a lot of traction.
Okay.
This post from @Longtime History. It said, ICE is forcing a U.S. Army Purple Heart veteran to deport. A guy named Se-Jun Park took 2 bullets in combat. I mean, that's just heartbreaking. It really makes you think about how we treat veterans.
It really does. In this case, it highlights a super controversial part of immigration enforcement, especially under this administration.
How so?
Well, here's a guy, Se-Jun Park, Purple Heart recipient, served the U.S., got severely injured, developed PTSD, which then led to drug addiction problems, likely stemming from his service trauma.
A sadly common story.
Exactly. And despite trying to turn things around, he had legal troubles, lost his green card, and ended up having to self-deport back to South Korea after almost 50 years here.
After 50 years, wow.
And it raises huge questions about non-citizen veterans. These folks make up a big chunk of the military, like 38%, but they can still face deportation for nonviolent crimes, often crimes linked back to the very service they gave. It's a tough reality that doesn't get talked about enough.
Definitely seems like it. And sticking with domestic enforcement, but a different angle, this video from @Quebenline out of Santa Monica, it showed some guys detaining another man.
I think I saw that one.
Yeah, the post was asking, where's the warrant? Where are the gang members Trump talked about? These guys are bounty hunters, kidnappers. That's strong language. For just an ordinary person seeing that, what does it actually mean legally?
Yeah, it really puts a spotlight on the blurry lines around private enforcement.
Blurry how?
Well, in California, bounty hunting is regulated by the Department of Insurance. But here's the catch. Guys whose only job is chasing bail fugitives. They don't actually need a license. Yeah, so you can have private individuals doing things normally reserved for trained police, but maybe without the same oversight or accountability. And we've seen this expansion of private contractors in areas like immigration, too. Critics worry it puts profit ahead of due process. And yeah, it can absolutely lead to abuses or just confusion for the public about who has authority.
That feels unsettling. Okay, let's lighten the mood slightly, though, with a bit of a sharp edge. A post from @JojoFrimgers just said, thank God for @TheOnionSaris. And it had that image of Pete Hegseth, the new Secretary of Defense, kind of joking about maybe using uranium as a cocktail mixer.
Right, classic Onion satire.
What does that kind of joke, that satire, tell us?
But it's a satire doing what it does best, right? Critiquing power, especially controversial appointments. Hegseth's confirmation was tight-kneaded VP Vance's tiebreaker vote. And the joke, while absurd, hits a nerve because uranium is seriously dangerous. Health risks are well documented by the EPA, banned in construction for ages. So the Onion uses this dark humor, like analysts point out, to tap into public anxiety or criticism about figures like Hegseth, his Fox News past, his Trump ties. It all adds layers to why people react strongly. Satire becomes a way to process or push back.
A pressure valve, maybe?
Could be, yeah.
All right, nearly done. Let's look at this last one from @VigilantFox. It caught a bit of a debate between Bernie Sanders and Joe Rogan about climate change.
Oh, yeah, that clip.
Sanders is saying, basically, climate change is real, not a hoax. The last 10 years are the warmest. And Rogan pushes back, mentioning a Washington Post piece suggesting a cooling period. It really shows how complex and frankly contested the science can seem.
It absolutely does. And it makes you think hard about how we process information, especially on something as huge and complicated as climate change. The Post itself kind of alluded to past climate predictions that didn't pan out, like the 70s ice age scares or predictions of an ice-free Arctic by 2013. That history reminds us to critically look at all claims, especially when there are massive economic and political stakes.
So Rogan's point about media or science maybe being influenced.
It encourages you to take a multifaceted view, doesn't it? To consider potential influences, financial or otherwise, and just generally approach the whole climate discourse, understanding there are different perspectives and sometimes conflicting data points. It means we need to keep learning, keep looking at different angles.
Okay, that's a lot of heavy ground we've covered. Challenging stuff. Let's end this deep dive on something purely positive, purely triumphant.
Please.
A post from @NBA just showing Shai fires up the OKC crowd up. It's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Thunder's big star, celebrating with fans at their championship parade. What a moment for that city.
Oh, amazing moment. It really just perfectly shows the power of sports, right? How a championship can totally transform a city's mood, the franchise's story.
First title since they moved from Seattle, right?
Exactly, since 2008. And the parade turnout was massive, maybe 500,000 fans, in a city of about 712,000 people. That's incredible support.
And Shai himself had an insane season.
Unbelievable. Led the league in scoring, won regular season MVP and finals MVP. Combine that with the smart, patient rebuilding the Thunder did under Sam Presti. It's just a perfect story of vision, community backing, and finally that huge shared success. Could be the start of something big for them.
Just pure joy. What a way to end. So what a trip through just one day on X, huh?
Absolutely.
From metamines and Lego perks to global crises, tough domestic issues, satire, scientific debates, and finally, a championship.
It really shows how fast things move, doesn't it? And how crucial context is to actually get what's behind the buzz. Everything's connected, from tech ideas to sports wins.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, thinking about all these rapid shifts we just talked about, what's maybe the single biggest misconception people might have when they see these kinds of trending topics fly by?
That's a good question. Maybe that they're just isolated little blips, when really each one, whether it's a politician suit or a company perk, is like a tiny window opening onto much larger, slower-moving shifts happening in our society, our economy, even how we see ourselves.
And they're symptoms, not just events.
Exactly. They're signals.
That's a really powerful thought to leave everyone with. It definitely connects the dots between our scrolling and the bigger world. Well, until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions.
And keep digging deeper.